Welcome to part 2 of chapter 10. In this part, we will try to explain or define what project management is all about. So we'll try to concentrate on the essence of project management. Now, project management is a very old field of human endeavor. I mean, think about those projects in the ancient times, such as construction of Egyptian pyramids or building of the Great Wall of China. I mean, those were like huge construction projects, and that's when that was that was the period when for the first time people in charge of those projects they started experiencing the issues, the human issues, the technical issues that characterize a project of any kind, be it an IT project or construction project. For example, I remember reading about Egyptian pyramids, and one of the challenges in relation to human resource management that people in charge of the construction of Egyptian pyramids were facing was that people were double dipping. I mean, there were thousands of people involved, and you need to provide, people in charge of those projects, they had to provide food for every worker. However, there were just so many people around that they couldn't really keep track of who got their meal and who didn't get their meal. So that's when they started doing they introduced passports where they would actually describe people. There were no photos at that time, of course, and based on those passports, they would give people food allowances for the day. Now, the building of the Great Wall of China was also interesting from a strategic management perspective because, as you probably know from history, uh, you know, uh, the Chinese were building this wall to protect them from nomadic tribes that were living at that time in the modern day Mongolia. Now, the problem with this project was it was an impressive project, but by the time it was completed, it was no longer relevant because by the time the Great Wall of China was completed, gunpowder was invented in China. So no matter how big that wall was, gunpowder could be used to make holes in the wall, right? So it was no longer uh, meeting the initial requirement, which is protecting Chinese, the borders of Imperial China from the invasion of nomadic tribes. Another famous project was the so-called Manhattan Project, initiated in the United States right after the World War II. The project was initiated to develop nuclear weapons. It was a huge project because it involved a lot of people, a lot of technologies, a lot of facilities. It lasted for 3 years, and $2 billion in 1946 dollars was spent on this project. Now, that was the time when people realized for the first time that one thing is to be a nuclear physicist, to understand nuclear physics and what needs to be done from a technical standpoint, and but the managing people, managing resources, managing facilities is something that is different, something that's not related to nuclear physics. So that's why this project had a separate project manager and a technical manager. Technical manager was somebody who knew something about nuclear physics, while project manager was more like an administrator, handling administrative issues. So what is a project So what is a project? Using the definition from the Project Management Book of Knowledge, this is the book or guide published by the Project Management Institute that is also administering the PMP certification. A project is a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result. Now, there are some important keywords here. Temporary means a project is time dependent, meaning there's always a start and end to a project. And undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result. It's the important keyword here is unique, because every project is different. I mean, any project is initiated to create something that hasn't been done before, at least to some extent, right? So unique is an important keyword. And any project has some kind of deliverable at the end, like a new product, a new technology product, or a new house, service, or some other result. Let's say improved retention of employees in the organization. So there's always the most important, the ultimate end result that every project is initiated for. Now, it's project management and projects are in contrast to operational management, which is work that is done to sustain a particular business on a daily basis. So in other words, there are some things that people do within organization on a daily basis. Let's say handling customer complaints. So this is not project management. Project management is something that is unique, something that is not done on a daily basis. Also, projects end, as I said, when their objectives have been reached or the project has been terminated. Let's say a project got canceled because of unavailability of funds. Projects can be of all types. They can be large and small. They can be undertaken within a short period of time, or they can take years to complete. So here we have some examples of IT projects. A technician replaces 10 laptops for a small department. It's a small project. Or a small software development team adds a new feature to an internal software application for the finance department. Or a college campus upgrades its technology infrastructure to provide wireless internet access across the entire campus. That seems to be a bigger project. A cross-functional task force in a company decides what voice over internet protocol, voice over IP system to purchase and how it will be implemented. So all those are examples of projects of various types, of IT projects of various types, size, and overall various intent or purpose. So to sum it up, a project has a unique purpose, is temporary, meaning its time frame has beginning, has end, and the end and the beginning is specifically defined in calendar terms. Sometimes developed using progressive elaboration, meaning you don't know exactly what you're doing from day one. You start with a general idea, with a general concept, and as the time progresses, as the work on the project progresses, you get a better and better and more granular and more specific understanding what needs to be done. A project requires resources, often from various areas: hardware resources, software resources, human resources, financial resources, and so forth. Any project has a primary customer or sponsor. The project sponsor usually provides the direction and funding for the project. Typically, it's a senior executive who supports and approves the project and allocates resources. Customer is for whom the project is initiated. So any IT project is initiated for end users. In other words, at the end of any IT project, there is a deliverable in the form of software or network or hardware that will be used by a particular group of people. And all projects involve uncertainty. I told you that by definition, every project is unique. It has a unique purpose, and you cannot know from day one what exactly you will deliver. It's something new. And when you're doing something new, when you're innovating, when you're pioneering something, there's always an uncertainty involved. So that's what project management is. There are many aspects. That's what project is. There are many aspects that define what a project is and how it's different from day-to-day operational management. So this is a project. Now, what about project management? Now, project management is the application of knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques to project activities to meet project requirements. So any project has certain requirements, and most of the time those requirements are related to scope, meaning what needs to be done, the size of the project, time, the time frame within which the project has to be completed, and cost, meaning the amount of money that can be spent on a particular project. So requirements, they fall into those three areas, and you need to, as a project manager, you need to use a lot of knowledge, skills, and tools and techniques or processes to make sure that the project is delivered within the requirements specified earlier. You can also define project management in terms of triple constraints. What they're saying that managing a project involves managing three constraints. Scope means the size, what needs to be done, let's say how many functional points a particular software product should have. Cost, how much money should be spent, and time goals. And you see, in a way, there's like a contradiction between, or some kind of paradox, not paradox, I think contradiction between those three constraints. Because what happens is that you cannot increase or modify one scope without touching the other ones. For example, if you're increasing the scope of the project, in other words, you're doubling the number of functional points in a particular software product, then you need to either double your budget, right? Because you need now you have double the work that was initially agreed upon, or you need to double the time, right? Typically, it actually both, because you see, like when you're doubling the scope, not only the number of functional points grows, also the overall complexity of the project grows. So you'll end up spending more money, and you will need more time to do that, right? So as a project manager, you need to have an eye on all three. And if somebody asks you to increase the scope, then you need to say, look, we need to renegotiate cost and time. Or if somebody asks you to speed up the project to deliver results, before the initial agreed upon deadline, then you need to understand that you either need to compromise the scope. You need to say, look, if you give me, instead of giving me 1 year, you give me 6 months, then I can only do half or even less of what was agreed upon, right? Or you need to increase cost. meaning you need to double your team or you need to double the resources devoted to the project to comply with this new deadline. And sometimes, as I said, the relationship is not linear. I mean, if your timeline is decreased from 12 months to 6 months, most likely you will end up not doubling but tripling or quadrupling your cost, because you'll have to have a lot of people on board. There'll be coordination complexity, you'll end up paying overtime and so forth. So some people argue that project management is all about this. It's all about having an eye, having a handle on those three areas: scope, what needs to be done; cost, how much it will cost; and time, how long it will take to deliver a particular IT project. So that's it when it comes to part 3. Thank you for listening.